The Sumerians believed that death was a trap. Not the end. Not rest. Not peace. A trap. A place with 7 gates. Each one designed to strip you of everything you brought with you. Your crown. Your dignity. Your protection. Your power. Until you arrived, at the throne of the dead, with nothing. And then, the judges looked at you. And what happened next, depended entirely on what you knew. What words you had been taught. What rituals had been performed over you. Whether the living had done what the tablets said must be done. Those who knew the words, passed through. Those who did not, were trapped. The tablets that describe this, are in the University of Pennsylvania Museum. In the British Museum. In the Oriental Institute of Chicago. They have been translated. They are over 4,000 years old. And they contain, the exact words. Welcome to the Shadow Ancestral. Every episode on this channel is built from documented evidence. Museum collections. Translated tablets. Academic papers you can read yourself. Tonight we go into the Sumerian Underworld. Not metaphorically. Into the documented cosmology of the civilization that invented writing, and what they believed waited for every human being at the moment of death. Subscribe right now if you are new here. Hit the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we open another tablet. Now, let us begin at the gate. To understand the words, you must first understand the trap. The Sumerian underworld was called Kur. In Akkadian, Erettu. Also known as Irkalla. The Great Below. The Land of No Return. Every name, a warning. Because the defining feature of the Sumerian underworld was not punishment. It was not fire. It was not demons. It was permanence. Once you entered, you did not leave. The World History Encyclopedia documents this plainly. The underworld was described as a dark, dreary cavern located deep below the ground, where inhabitants continued a diminished version of life on Earth. The food there was dust. Dry. Bitter. Suffocating. The water was brackish. The light did not exist. And the spirit that survived death, called the Gittim in Sumerian, the Etemmu in Akkadian, was fully self-aware inside that darkness. Not sleeping. Not unconscious. Aware. Aware of the dust it was eating. Aware of the darkness surrounding it. Aware that it was trapped. For eternity. This is what the Sumerians believed waited for every human being at the moment of death. Unless, you knew what the tablets said. The Descent of Inanna, pressed into clay tablets in the 3rd millennium BCE, is the oldest detailed description of the underworld trap ever written. It is documented at the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago. Translated by Samuel Noah Kramer, one of the foremost Sumerologists of the 20th century. Published in full in 1983 in collaboration with Diane Wolkstein. The text describes what happens when the goddess Inanna, the most powerful deity in the Sumerian pantheon, decides to descend to the underworld. If it could happen to a goddess, it could happen to anyone. At the outer gate, she knocked. The gatekeeper Neti opened it a crack and asked, "Why has your heart led you on the road from which no traveler returns?" She was allowed to enter. But at the first gate, her crown was taken. At the second gate, her earrings. At the third, her necklace. At the fourth, her breastplate. At the fifth, her golden ring. At the sixth, her measuring rod and line. The symbols of her authority. At the seventh gate, her royal robe. She arrived at the throne of Ereshkigal, queen of the dead, naked. Bowed low. Stripped of everything. And Inanna asked, each time a piece was taken, what is the meaning of this? The answer was always the same. Quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned. No negotiation. No exception. Not even for a goddess. The 7 Anunnaki judges looked at her. They struck her with the eye of death, the word of wrath, the cry of condemnation. Inanna was killed. Turned into a corpse. Hung on a hook. This is the trap. Every human being, according to the Sumerian tablets, faces this same descent. The same 7 gates. The same stripping. The same judgment. The only question is what happens at the throne. But Inanna was a goddess. She had prepared. She had left instructions with her servant Ninshubur, a precise set of actions to take if she did not return in 3 days. And when 3 days passed, and Inanna had not returned, Ninshubur did exactly what she had been told. She went to the gods. She begged for help. Enlil refused. Nanna refused. Only Enki, the god of wisdom, acted. He created 2 small beings from the dirt beneath his fingernail. Neither male nor female. Neither living nor dead. He gave them the food of life. The water of life. And they slipped into the underworld, unnoticed, and sprinkled both on Inanna's corpse. She rose. But there was a rule. The law of balance. Documented across multiple Sumerian texts. No one ascends from the underworld unless someone takes their place. A soul must remain. For ordinary human beings, there was no Enki to create beings from his fingernails. No servant waiting above with instructions. For ordinary people, if the trap closed, it stayed closed. And this is what the Sumerians feared most. Not death itself, but the Etemmu, the trapped spirit, that wandered the underworld eating dust, because no one above had said the words. Because the Kispu ritual, documented in cuneiform texts from the 3rd millennium BCE, had not been performed. Because the living had forgotten their obligation to the dead. We are at the halfway point. And what comes next is the part the tablets were actually written for. Not the mythology. Not the gods. The words. The exact ritual. The exact formulae. What the living were required to say and do, to keep the dead from being trapped. Subscribe to the Shadow Ancestral right now. Every episode on this channel goes deeper than the last. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Now, the words. The Kispu. The ritual the Sumerians performed to care for their dead. Documented in cuneiform texts from the 3rd millennium BCE, confirmed by scholar Akio Tsukamoto of Kyoto Sanjo University in his foundational 1985 study. The Kispu had 3 core components. 1. The recitation of specific formulae. Exact words. Precise sequence. Not improvised. Not personal. Formulae, prescribed by the tablets. Recited by the family of the dead. 2. The pouring of water. Libations poured into the grave through a clay pipe, allowing the Etemmu to drink in the underworld where the water was brackish and bitter. 3. The invocation of the name. The ancestor's name, spoken aloud, by a living descendant. All 3, required. All 3, documented. All 3, performed monthly, on the moonless night. And annually, during the month of Etemmu. This was not optional. This was not a suggestion. This was a family obligation that lasted for generations. Because the Sumerians believed that a dead ancestor whose Kispu was not performed, became a ghost. An angry one. The World History Encyclopedia documents what happened to the neglected dead. The food of the underworld is bitter, the water of the underworld is brackish. What is cast out on the street, that he eats? An Etemmu without Kispu did not stay in the underworld quietly. It came back. The cuneiform texts describe it specifically: a ghost who was ignored would seize a living person through the ear. The Sumerians called it, the hand of the ghost. Etemmu. It caused mental illness, seizures, deterioration. The only protection was to have performed the Kispu correctly. To have said the words. To have poured the water. To have spoken the name. Every month. Without fail. For as long as the family line continued. Now, the words. Old Babylonian incantation tablets, documented in the academic paper Sumerian and Akkadian in Old Babylonian incantation tablets, preserve the actual formulae recited during rituals involving the dead. One of the most powerful, the exorcism formula, was used both to protect the living from the Etemmu and to release a trapped spirit. It was called the Z-Pa-3 formula. The formula of the sacred oath. The words, translated from Akkadian cuneiform, invoke every god in the pantheon as witnesses and protectors. You shall be exorcised by the heavens. You shall be exorcised by the earth. You shall be exorcised by Enlil, king of all lands. You shall be exorcised by Enki, king of the Abzu. You shall be exorcised by Utu, king of the Ababar. You shall be exorcised by Ningesida, throne-bearer of the underworld. 6 gods. Named in sequence. Their domains listed. Their authority invoked. This was not poetry. This was a key. The Sumerians believed that words, spoken in the correct sequence, with the correct ritual actions, had the power to move between worlds. To open the gates of the underworld. To release a trapped Etemmu. To ensure safe passage through the 7 gates. The exorcists who performed these rituals, called Asipu, spent years memorizing the tablets. Because a single mistake, a single word out of sequence, could trap the exorcist alongside the dead. The tablets were not kept in homes. They were kept in temple libraries. Under lock. In the care of trained specialists. Because the words were that powerful. And that dangerous. The most comprehensive collection of death-related incantations the Sumerians and Babylonians left behind was a 9-tablet series called the Maqlû. The word means, the burning. It was a complete ritual system, performed over a single night, from sunset to sunrise, designed to neutralize evil, release trapped spirits, and protect the living from what the dead could do. The tablets prescribed exact actions, circles drawn on the ground using flour paste. Figurines placed within them. Specific incantations recited at specific moments of the night. One instruction from the Maqlû series reads: Thereafter, you encircle the bed with flour paste and recite the incantation Sage.ba Sage.ba and the incantation Tumubitu, adjured is the house. Adjured. The house itself, adjured. Made sacred. Sealed against what could come through if the words were wrong. The Maqlû was not performed casually. It required a trained Asipu, an exorcist, who knew every tablet. Every word. Every action. Every moment of the night at which each incantation must be spoken. Because the Sumerians understood something that most people today have forgotten. The border between the living and the dead was not closed. It was permeable. The Etemmu could cross it. The Gala, the demons of the underworld, could cross it. And only the words, spoken correctly, could seal it again. Here is what these tablets are actually saying. The Sumerians, the civilization that invented writing, that built the first cities, that developed the first legal codes, believed that the moment of death was not an ending. It was a transition with specific requirements. Requirements that had to be met by the living, for the dead. And requirements that the dying person needed to know, before they crossed the first gate. The words were not prayers. They were not comfort. They were navigation. Instructions for moving through the 7 gates. For facing the judges. For not ending up hanging on a hook in the dark, eating dust, for eternity. And the Sumerians trusted this knowledge to the most durable material they had. Not wood. Not papyrus. Clay. Baked hard. Pressed into. Permanent. So that whoever came after them, whoever found the tablets, whoever learned to read the cuneiform, would have the words. Those tablets are in museums right now. Translated. Accessible. Still speaking. From the oldest civilization that ever pressed knowledge into clay. To whoever is listening. The Sumerians believed death was a trap with 7 gates. That what waited at the bottom was dust and darkness and a self-aware spirit that could never leave. Unless someone knew the words. Unless the ritual had been performed. Unless the living had fulfilled their obligation to the dead. The Kispu. The Z-Pa-3 formula. The Maqlû. The Asipu and their 9 tablets of burning. All of it, documented. All of it, preserved in clay. All of it, in museums right now. The Sumerians wrote these words down 4,000 years ago so that no one would face the 7 gates without knowing what was coming. If this video opened something in you, subscribe to the Shadow Ancestral right now. Leave a comment. Did the Sumerians discover something real about death, or build the most elaborate mythology in human history to avoid facing it? Share this with someone who has never thought about what the oldest civilization on Earth believed happened after they died. Next week, we go to a tablet that was deliberately hidden. Not lost. Not forgotten. Hidden. By the people who understood what it said about them. The shadow has more to show you. Learn the words. Before you need them.